Welcome on this interpersonal communication skills module, which is part of our relational leadership day from our 2015 virtual leadership summit. I am Sandro Mazzi. I'm a leadership consultant and executive coach for TPC in Italy. Before we start, just a few suggestions about what you will need for this module, which we try to keep interactive. So some writing material, pen, notebook, whatever helps you, taking notes and following some exercises that I will offer you, and a quiet time and space to be really present for this session. So let's check in. How present are you for today's session? And what do you need to do to get the most out of this session? You might have some other electronic devices around you, some softwares open that might cause some noises that might distract you. You're investing your time here, so we really like you to get the most. What can you do about that? And most of all, what is your learning objective for this session? What would you like to get out of this session? Now, in terms of aims, basically, I'd like, first of all, to give you an idea of some of the issues related to intercultural communication in the workplace, and then look at some tools for developing intercultural competence and powerful listening. And this is basically how the webinar is structured. So first of all, cultural diversity at the workplace, then developing your intercultural competence and powerful listening. First question, what is diversity? What does diversity mean to you? Here's a picture. What are the first things that you come up with when you hear the word diversity? It's a lot of things. So, we know diversity is everywhere, and that people differ for a number of reasons. They can differ for age, culture, and gender or socioeconomic background. So, we know that each human is essentially unique and different, and that is also because each human being is an organizer of events, and the particular organization of events which we develop creates our own experience. George Kelly, starting from the 50s, researched a lot on that. So, as a result, we can say that reality is not just one, but there are multiple realities because each human being is essentially unique. And more recently, Bennett wrote about that. Milton Bennett, scholar of intercultural communication. Now, what is the situation focusing on culture, thinking of cultural diversity at your workplace? What does it mean to you, cultural diversity? How do you know that it is cultural and not related to other differences? And what do other people around you at your workplace think about that? And more in general, how much do you think there is cultural diversity at your workplace? Now, when we are not sure whether the tools that we need to develop are because of the different cultures or not, here we have a definition that can help us. So the two scholars, Lustig and Köster of intercultural communication, say that when large and important cultural differences create dissimilar interpretations and expectations about how to behave and communicate in a competent manner, this is where we have intercultural communication. That can help us just understanding when to develop the specific tools that scholarship has created for that. Now, we know that diversity, cultural diversity, brings challenges and benefits. It is an opportunity, but there are also some limits. The communication can be blocked, and then there can be misunderstandings. But it is also an opportunity to get higher creativity, innovative solutions, and ultimately better performances. Thinking at your workplace, what are some of the challenges that are coming from cultural diversity? And what are some of the benefits coming from it? What do you see the impact is of cultural diversity on your relational leadership skill? For you as a leader, what is the impact of cultural diversity when you relate to other people? And if you had to rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is low and 10 is high, how would you manage yourself? How would you rate yourself on managing diversity? Now, let's have a look at this definition of competent communication. Spitzberg says that it is an interaction that is perceived both as effective and appropriate from the person or the context in which the interaction occurs. So it's not just about being effective, but also at the same time appropriate. And this has to be perceived by the other. So we don't really have guarantee to check ourselves that we are competently communicating until we don't understand what happened to the other side. Now, empathy is a very important tool for intercultural communication. Look at these two definitions here. Have a look at them. How do they resonate with you? You might already know that empathy is a very important quality for a leader. And now you know that it is very important also for intercultural communication. So the idea is that it's not just about feeling, but it's also about thinking. It's not just about the position, the emotional position, but also about the perspective. So the way people see things. And as a leader, it is important to develop this skill more than ever before, now that the workplaces have become more and more intercultural. Here is an exercise for you. Developing empathy in 6 steps. This is an exercise suggested by Milton Bennett that I mentioned already today. So the 6 steps are assuming difference, knowing self, suspending self, allowing guided imagination, empathic experience, and reestablishing the self. First of all, I'd like you to think of the people from different cultures that you have relationships with at your workplace. It could be internal or external. Just come up with a few of them. And choose one that you want to work on, one person or relationship that you want to work on, a relationship that you would like to understand more of. Choose one of them. If you think that there is not enough cultural diversity to identifying an interesting relationship, you might think of another relationship, of another person, in relation to which you feel there is a high degree or an important degree of difference, of diversity. Now that you chose this person, I'm going to ask you to listen to my questions and to focus a bit on your inner world. So, if you want, potentially you can lower your eyes or close them. Just listen to my questions for a while. It will take me a few minutes, and I will lead you through this exercise by asking you some questions and asking you to use your imagination. So, first of all, we're starting. Focus on the idea that each human being is essentially unique. Reflect on the fact that having experiences with others doesn't mean having exactly the same experience, even if we shared some experiences. As the way we perceive events changes from person to person. So reflect on the fact that there are multiple realities according to the ways people represent their experiences. And now let's work a bit on your identity. Reflect on what really matters for you in your life. What are the values you hold from your culture? What are your individual values, regardless your culture? What are the most important values that lead you in your life? And what are your assumptions and beliefs about life, the core ones? So in general, what do you stand for in your life? Now, this is a way to identify yourself, your identity. And now, imagine your identity as an arbitrary boundary that can be drawn between you and the rest of the world, including other people. This is your identity, and you clearly see the boundary. Imagine now to temporarily eliminate the separation between you and the environment. Imagine to temporarily expand this boundary. There's no more separation. You're expanding this boundary. You're expanding the boundaries of your identity while the content of it remains the same. And now allow your awareness to wander among other people. In the same way you normally wander within your experience. And imagine now to wander towards the person you chose for this exercise. Allow your imagination to guide you to this person, to identify with this person. Similarly to what happens when you watch a film or read a novel and you identify yourself with a character. Now it's like you're inside this person you chose for this exercise. And you can now experience that person as if that person was yourself. Now you are in this position. So this feeling might be familiar because it is you experiencing it. But it also might feel a bit alien because that experience itself is not your own. Stay in this position for a while and feel what it is like. Your boundaries are expanded. Now you identify with this person. Now imagine that you are leading yourself back inside your boundaries. You had enough of this feeling that you understood enough what it is like. And clearly draw your boundaries again. And now you see the boundaries, they are clearly visible and you can see them. And that's the end of this exercise. Now, let's have a look at some debriefing questions. Go through these questions. Any shifts in your awareness? Anything new that you learned about this person? And how do you think empathy can help you develop relational skills to grow as a leader? Thinking of some relationship with people from a different culture in your workplace. What are the major insights that you had from this exercise? And how are you going to use the outcomes of it in your workplace? Just take a few notes. And let's move on now to the next bit. So Bennett talks about the platinum rule. Probably many of you know the golden rule that says do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Well, Bennett says at the basis of the golden rule there is sympathy, which can be great in situations which we deal with people that have a certain degree of similarity with us. But when it comes to intercultural communication, sympathy is probably not the best attitude and quality to keep, while empathy is allowing us really to understand the other. So, thinking of this, reflections of Bennett says, do unto others as they themselves would have done unto them. How does this quote resonate with you as a leader? Just take a few seconds for reflecting on this, and if you want to take some notes. one again. Look at this. How many deers can you see? So we're talking now about perceptual stimuli, the many that we have at every second of our life. So I know there's more than one deer. I see at least three. Maybe there are more than that. Anyway, what I'd like to go through with you now is the importance of the description. So what happens normally is that based on what we see, we make interpretations of it. And based on our interpretations, we make some evaluations. And according to the evaluations that we make, we implement some actions. And we do this based on, this builds who we are. So our actions determine who we are. And who we are also determines what we see. So it's like a circle, a cycle. So what we see might not be the same. We said we are all different. And this can cause misunderstandings, like in this picture. So this is where miscommunication occurs. I see something, but the other person sees something else, and we don't understand each other. Now, here I offer you another exercise to do something for that, and it's about descriptive statements. So the idea around this is that descriptive statements allow the identification of the sensorial information. So the basis of our interpretations and evaluations. In other words, if we identify that, we are more free to develop more options, more hypotheses, more interpretations about what happened. We don't get stuck with what we immediately see and the evaluation that is related to it. So we do mental shortcuts. If I see something, if I see a behavior, if I see a gesture, I immediately evaluate it. And based on my evaluation, I do something. So with this tool, the idea is to stay a bit more on describing what really happened and not get to the shortcut of evaluation. Ultimately, this tool allows us to make more interpretations and therefore more evaluations, and eventually allows us to be more free for doing the things that we really want to do. And when it's about workplace and business, not losing many occasions some opportunities for having a good communication flow or doing some good agreements with other people. So let's say, to make an example, that I am working with someone that comes from a culture in which the orientation towards time is different from the one that my culture gives me. So it's okay to be late to a meeting, for instance, or it's okay to interrupt the meeting because of other people are coming, because of other things that I have to do. So I might go abroad and find different ways of relating. My expectations are not met. So I think we have different interpretations of what happens. Now, if I get stuck in what automatically, according to my culture, this means, I might lose opportunities. And that's why making descriptive statements can help. Now, I'd like you to choose a person or situation from your workplace for using this tool. Could be, again, internal or external, but maybe a situation that has been challenging or that requires some attention from you. And think of a recent specific situation. where intercultural communication occurred, or that there has been an interaction. And write a number of descriptive statements about what happened. Now you might make some interpretations of the sensory information. Just make a list of interpretations of the sensory information that you listed before. Of the descriptive statements. Now it could be that these interpretations that you made now suggest very different evaluations of what happened. Just check in if you can come up with something else. And let's have a look at these questions. What did you learn in terms of that behavior, that person? And how can this be helpful at the relational level for you as a leader? Just take a few moments for reflecting and taking some notes. Okay, these are some checking questions that you might go through in your workplace when you're working, when you are working with someone from another culture, that I suggest that you have a look at afterwards. And this can help you understanding whether you really need to activate the kind of tools and attention that intercultural communication requires. Okay, now let's move on to the last part of this module. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. Now, apparently, there are some cultures which prefer indirect and implicit messages, while there are some cultures that prefer the use of direct and explicit messages. And this can cause misunderstandings because I might feel offended or I might not get clear about what you're trying to say. So a kind of communication that is a high context is the long-term relationship communication. So when there is not much to be made explicit because we get an understanding when we understand the non-verbal signs quite immediately, as opposed to computer language that requires to make everything very specific. So according to Hall's study, there are some cultures who prefer the first kind of messages and some that prefer the second kind of messages. Examples of low context cultures are the German, the Swedish, European American, or the English, as opposed to examples of high context cultures such as Japanese, most African and Asian and Latino cultures. Of course, this is not strict. We're talking about preferences and it's a generalization, but it could be very helpful in some working situations when we might feel a bit confused or offended or not really understanding what's going on. So it's important to study the cultures in order to understand what their preference is. But it is also useful another tool that I'd like to offer you today, which is the 4 years model that helps understanding what are the hidden messages within the messages. So this can be useful both for your intercultural communication relationships, but also for some other conversation, could be difficult conversation, could be potentially some conflicts that you might have. This is actually a tool coming from the conflict resolution area. Now, this is called the 4 years model, and it's from the German model Schulz von Thun. He added to the Václavic levels, channels of communication, so the content and the relationship, two more channels. One is the self-revealing, and one is the appeal channel. This is a little picture for understanding what happened. It's like there are these 4 layers, 4 channels at every message, and we can hear every message with 4 ears. And of course, this allows us to get much more understanding of what has been said. So if I think that there is also something that the person is asking me, there is an appeal, something that the person is asking me, wants me to do, it is quite different if I don't understand that. And if the person is revealing something about me, it's also another opportunity for understanding more of what is going on. An example of using this: say that you are in your leadership position and a person working with you says, "You cut me off in the last core staff meeting." So it could be that at the fact channel he says he felt cut off in the last meeting, and is revealing that he didn't like to be cut off, and that he is also saying at the relationship level that he or she is afraid you don't appreciate what he or she says or do. And so there is maybe also the expression of a need, which is to be accepted and appreciated by you and maybe your core staff, the persons were in the meeting. This is just an example of how using it. What I'd like you to do now is to choose a difficult conversation you had in your workplace. It could be from a person, with a person from another culture or from the same culture. And using the 4 years model, answer the questions related. What is he talking? Fact channel, and so on. Just go through the 4 questions alone. See if you can come up with some answers to these questions. Just get ready now to move to the next slide. And let's have a look at these reflective questions again. So what did you learn about that conversation? What about that person? And what does it mean to you as a leader? Okay. Listening. Often when we talk about listening, active listening is about do this, don't do that. Verbal behavior sometimes, mostly non-verbal actions, keeping an open posture, eye contact, and so on. Well, there's another way to look at that, which is thinking and seeing as, or describing listening as an intention before everything else, an attitude. It's the intention to give you the message that I really want to understand what you are trying to tell me, that I'm interested in what you want to say before I formulate any opinion around that. So, giving this idea requires something that is inside. So, it's not about doing, the doing comes afterwards. It's about having this intention inside, within. Another thing, so I need to be interested in the others. What if I'm not? What if some people I don't really get along with require my attention? It could be some colleagues in my workplace. So some psychologists say that they might represent some parts of ourselves, and that these parts of ourselves are therefore an opportunity for us to develop interest for the others. So the other way around means I see you and you might represent a part of me that requires more attention. So by working on our relationship and by working on myself, I can mutually reinforce the relationship with the part of myself and the relationship with you. So it is an opportunity also to listen to and develop interest for our inner parts. And if I really deeply listen to you, this can cause some changes in me. So we know that listening can be very powerful for a number of reasons, but it can also change the way we are. Mm. And if we are exposed and listen to a lot of diversity, and this may mean that there's a change waiting for us. Now, here is a summary for you about the things we went through, the importance of identity and self-awareness for intercultural communication competence, empathy, so reflections on what is real and how everybody is unique, some tools for developing a powerful listening, different levels that every message holds, and eventually the listening can be seen as an attitude, an opportunity to get to know more of ourselves and potentially to change something. That's it. Now, before we leave, just have a look at this last picture. What is one insight that you had in this module and two immediate actions that you would like to undertake? So that's the end of this module. Thanks again for being here today and enjoy the rest of the day and the Virtual Leadership Summit 2050. Thank you again.